All right, here we go. It's the first ride and tell. Take you guys on a little ride along. So this is the GPS dash cam there. Just gonna go for a ride. I'm just gonna speak my mind. Hopefully I don't crash my car. All right. So basically, why I'm starting this video today, the first of the ride along series. So I'm just gonna talk about, this guy's kind of close. Just gonna talk about, people downplaying other people's pain and anguish. Essentially, things can always be worse mentality. It's like, I understand that mentality, and like I've used it on myself and also on others too. But the thing that people I think overlook is that sorry, I always hate coming out of this tent. Don't know if anyone's gonna fly by. But the thing that people always overlook is that everyone's going through their own personal struggle, and like things that, okay, a rich person would be going through as a struggle for them, of course, may not necessarily be on the same level as someone who's poor and things like that. But I guess the topic is still the same, It's like, okay, it may not necessarily be to that same level of a poor person, but like a rich person going from, say, a Mercedes down to a Lexus, that idea of a downgrade, it's still something that causes them grief. And so like you can relate on that, for someone who may be like middle class, they may now be going from their home down to, a shelter because they can't afford their home anymore because of some downgrades that happened in their life. So, the topic is still the same. Downgrading is still the same, but the effect that it has is different, So that's why I don't necessarily believe in shaming rich people simply because, it could be worse. Like you're complaining that you lost your Mercedes, but you still have a Lexus. It's like, well, no, we need to understand here that the topic is still the same, that downgrading effect, it still hurts. No one likes to be downgraded. But you can then, because they are still fortunate that their downgrade still puts them in a better position than everyone else, you can then still challenge them on, their grief and say, I understand what you're saying, but at the very least, you should be happy that you still have a car, because a lot of other people don't have a car or can't afford even that mid-level that you have for your car that you're using now. So all those things, there's ways to educate people without necessarily shaming them. But then, of course, if they don't understand and they're still like, no, this is still the worst thing ever, then of course, okay, go ahead and shame them. But I feel like people always love to play this it could be worse game without really educating people or without really thinking about what it is they're saying it could be worse for. Because essentially anything could be worse. Like, there's no bottom to that barrel. Like, it's very subjective and things like that. So I'm like, well, where do you draw the line, Someone comes into the policeman and says, hey, I was assaulted. The policeman was like, oh, what, were you assaulted and violated? It's like, no, oh, well, it's no big deal, it could be worse. And then someone comes and saying, I was assaulted and violated. The policeman was like, were you assaulted, violated, and tortured? It's like, no, well, then it could be worse, so get out. It's like, well, where do we draw the line? Someone comes in, I've been assaulted, violated, and tortured. The policeman, well, you weren't assaulted, violated, and killed, tortured and killed, were you? No, because you're here right now. So it's like, where do we draw the line? We can just keep on going. So it's very subjective. So for me, where I draw the line is, okay, were your freedoms and, your rights and your autonomy violated? Because that's the line for me, as well as like, okay, is your quality of life, your overall quality of life, whether physically or mentally, has that been infringed on or, lowered? That's the thing that I would draw the line at right there. So, I mean, for instance, another example would be someone could then say, okay, so then for someone who went from a house down to a shelter, you could still apply the same logic that I said for someone who went down from a from a Mercedes down to a Lexus. And that's true. Because that person who went from a home to a shelter, assuming that that shelter is taking care of all their needs and things like that, and is not like, you know, crowded, dirty, and all that stuff, then yeah, you can say the same thing. Well, you know, I understand the downgrade because no one likes to be downgraded, but at least you still have a home to go to, you know, home-ish. You still have a place to go to while other people end up on the streets, you know. It's at the street level, if we're talking about the house example, where I would draw the line. And is that having no car where I would draw the line? I know people would say, oh, well, there's public transportation. Yeah, you know, you still need a car. A car is a necessity, fellas. In my mind, a car is a necessity. Having that effectiveness and not having to wait 30 minutes for a 15-minute drive is nice. But if we're sticking to the house example, for me, I would draw the line at not having a house. So when you don't have a house, that to me is like affecting your quality of life. Your bare essentials of a shelter are not being met. So at that point, I wouldn't then play the, oh, it could be worse game type of thing, because no, this is as worse as it gets, you know, in that regard. You need a house. All right. Sorry, fellas, I'm still trying to make, okay. Just trying to see if the wave is clear. Oh yeah, the video may be extremely bright. I had to jack up the brightness. So for a change, the exposure is up high as opposed to my normal low exposure. But yeah, anyway. So basically what I was saying, you know, it's like I draw the line at where your basic necessities aren't being met and your overall quality of life is taking a hit, you know. That's where I draw the line. I don't draw it arbitrarily or subjectively on, oh, things could be worse, you know. There's always something else. No, I draw it to where, okay, is your quality of life being affected? Are your bare necessities not being met? Are those things checked? Okay, yeah, well, there's a problem here. I mean, maybe you could just check off one, too. Doesn't necessarily have to be both of them, but, you know, that's what that's how I approach the, oh, it could be worse mentality and things like that, you know. And of course, if none of those things are being checked off, then obviously, like I said, it's not the end of the world type of a situation, but still have to keep in mind that the topic of things being, the topic of contention may still apply, you know, like downgrading, losing your house, and moving to, yeah, so essentially downgrading. So losing your mansion, going to a regular home, or losing your Lexus, or your Mercedes and going to a Lexus, you know, that topic of downgrading, you know, it still hurts regardless of if you're rich or poor. So respect that, but of course you can, of course, challenge them on the fact that, you know, you're still fortunate. So that's essentially what I'm trying to get at here, fellas. I've probably gone all over the place because, like I said, I don't make a script when I do these talks, but essentially what I'm getting at is that, you know, don't just go off of, oh, it could always be worse mentality without actually critically looking at things. And then don't just arbitrarily draw the line at some, you know, subjective opinion and things like that, you know. I would say put it somewhere where it's as neutral and objective as possible, i.e., is your quality of life impacted by what has happened, significantly impacted by what has happened? Are your, you know, rights, your freedoms, your autonomy, have they all been impacted and things like that, you know? So that is what I would say you need to look at before you start saying, oh, it could be worse type of thing. Because, like I said, if you play that game, then essentially everything could be worse, you know. Everything could be worse. Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. You know, basically, respect everyone's struggles. Don't just assume because they're rich and well off that, you know, they don't have anything to complain about. You know, critically look at it. See, okay, what is the, you know, topic, the overarching topic here? And understand, how does this affect their quality of life, and does it infringe on their freedoms and their rights and things like that, you know. That's the more, I guess, objective and neutral way to look at it. But as always, that's just my opinion, and that's the thing. Things can always be worse. You know, some people like to say, oh, well, you think that's bad, you should go to the Congo or go to Iraq. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, sure, you can go somewhere else and things would be worse, but that doesn't negate the impact that the thing is having over here, you know. It doesn't mean that this is nothing. You know, so, like I said, you keep playing that game and then you can keep getting into further and further egregious things. Just because something is worse somewhere else, or someone has it worse than you, doesn't mean that what you're going through isn't valid. Like I said, you need to look at it objectively as you can, and I think taking the approach of, okay, does what you're saying, you know, or what has happened to you, does it affect your overall quality of life, and has it infringed upon your rights, your freedoms, and your autonomy and things like that. I don't know if you just look at them individually or you take them as a unit. I'd say you probably have to look at it all together and see just how significant it is and all that. But I don't think you can rightly say that just because the person is rich and has other homes, that them losing one home is nothing, you know, and they should get over it, you know. No one losing a home or whatever is something that no one wants. So, whether you're rich or not. So you can relate to them on that and talk about that. But then, of course, you can say, yeah, you're lucky that you have other homes. Some people, they lose their home and that is it. But you can still understand their anguish. That's what I'm saying. You can still understand. Alright, calm down. Oh God. Everybody's out in their jacked up truck today. Friday the 18th, jacked up truck day. Oh yeah, this guy's taking it wide, Papa. Oh, you guys will see it now. The Manitic concrete. Got a big load. Yo, mama. Oh, please let me get ahead of this guy before he takes the dead. He'll probably crush me. I always hate letting these big trucks, or these big, how do you call them? Yeah, they're trucks, ton trucks. Take the 10 with me. Afraid they might overlap and crush me. Now he's going to try and race me, I guess. Because his lane is going to end up merging into mine. I'll let him through. Because I'm nice like that. Come. Come, Skip, come. Right? Kids coming home from school, the new normal. Mask on, mask off. It's crazy. Hey? Hey! That was close, Papa. Man was almost inside him, that sweet ass. That sweetie. Yeah. The light barely turned green by. Make way. Coming through, fellas.